I'm going to leave you with one thought today, Bryce. I now know categorically that the Tic Tac is Lockheed Martin technology. Categorically.
Okay.
While our government's official position is not to speculate on this subject, we can choose to let our minds explore other possibilities, to use our imaginations. For if we consider that astroscientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.
What's up, guys? Oh, hello, Suzanne. How are you? I don't know how that happened. I apologize.
No
Everyone
worries.
say
Hi,
hi.
everybody.
I'll put you back in the green room.
Okay, bye.
Oh, don't you love starting with technical difficulties, guys? I'm just kidding. I meant to do that. I wanted to catch her off guard. Welcome to Somewhere in the Live Stream tonight, guys. Look, it's been a week. It's been a week of weird, for sure. I have been in London for the past 3.5 to 4 days. So I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. I haven't been keeping up with everything that's been going on in the UFO world. However, there's one place that I always go for my UFO news, and that is that UFO podcast. And they did a 2-part weekly roundup of all the latest UFO news this past week. So we're going to be talking a lot about what they covered over there as well. I'm kind of, siphoning that UFO podcast gas and putting it in my little beat up rust bucket of a car over here at Somewhere in the Skies. And I couldn't think of a better person to do that with than the co-host of that UFO podcast, and that is Dan Zetterstrom. He's going to be joining us in just a few minutes. I cannot wait to break down all of this stuff with him. But hello, guys. Hello to all of our regulars out there. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I see you. I hear you. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. If you're watching us over on Twitter, do me a favor. Hop on over to YouTube. Join us in the live chat where you can interact with us. And it's a lot more lively over here on YouTube. So if you're watching on Twitter, just go to the Ryan Sprague YouTube channel and join us there. Hello to our Twitch watchers as well. It's always good to see you guys. And wherever else we stream, I think that's it. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, like I mentioned, I was in London this past week. I guess kind of on assignment. I got some stuff in the works as always. But the real reason I was in London was because I got to see one of my favorite podcasts. Yes, not listen to, but see. When I'm not making podcasts, I'm listening to them. That's literally all I do. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with podcasts. It's how I get my news. It's how I get my culture. It's how I get my UFO news, obviously, and everything in between. But I had the amazing opportunity to see one of my favorite movie review podcasts, and that is called We Hate Movies. I've been listening for, almost 9 years now to these guys. And what's funny is all 4 of the hosts of We Hate Movies, I lived within a 5-block radius of them in Astoria, Queens, back when I lived in New York City. I'd often see them on the streets. They'd always bring up like our local bodega in their episodes, stuff like that, our local movie theater, which was so cool. But I never got to see them do a live show in New York City. I had to go to Oxford, England to finally see them do a live podcast recording. And then I spent a couple days in London before that, and it was just incredible. I've got a couple photos here. I'll just pop up on the screen. There's the 4 guys there. They reviewed Quantum of Solace, the 007 movie, which if you guys are familiar with that one, it's probably the worst 007 that Daniel Craig did during his run as his tenure as James Bond. And they ripped the movie apart in front of a sold out audience. I was so impressed. It's funny. You listen to these podcasts and you feel like you're the only one, right? Like when you listen to Somewhere in the Skies and we have a guest, or you listen to that UFO podcast, like I feel like I'm the only one in the room with Dan and Andy listening. It's very intimate, and that's the sign of a good podcast. You feel like you're a part of it. You feel like you're just that friend hanging out in the background. But here I was with like 200 of my friends watching We Hate Movies, and it was just so much fun. Not the most flattering photo of me if you're watching this on YouTube, but I had to get one in front of the screen there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And like I said, I did some other fun stuff in London as well. Got some really good food. It was a great trip. But enough about that. I want to get to the UFO news with you guys because he is only here for a limited amount of time. He's a busy guy. But before we do that, like, subscribe. Super chat is open if you guys want to ask Dan any questions tonight, or me, put them in the super chat. That way we'll see them immediately. And it's a quick way to help out and support the show as well. Super chat will be open all night, and you'll be helping to fund Anomicon 2025, our free virtual conference that is happening September 20th and possibly September 21st. More news on that soon. But yes, that will be taking place. It's free for you guys right here on YouTube, but it's not free to create. So anything you give to the show is put right into Anomicon 2025. So thank you in advance for that. We also have PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, all that stuff. Links can be found in the show notes below, and the QR codes will be popping up on the screen. But yeah, that's about it for that. So let's get to the latest UFO news. And to do that, we are going to bring him in. He is the one and only Dan Zetterstrom. Welcome, buddy.
Thank you so much for having me. Whenever I'm on here and you do intros, I always feel like I need wrestling music, entrance music, some fireworks going off. You're a good hype man. I a lot of respect for that.
Hey man, I'm almost 70 episodes into my wrestling podcast, so I hope
70.
I can bring that energy by
Definitely.
now. Yeah. Can you believe that? 70 episodes of a wrestling podcast. Yeah. I'm like a 12-year-old dude. I'm like a 12-year-old, but hey,
we're all nerds, right? We're all nerds. People are nerds about cars, they're nerds about guns, they're nerds about TV shows, they're nerds about podcasting. Everyone's a nerd. What was it? Jesus said the geek will inherit the earth. I think that's what he said. So I think that's
that is straight from the Bible, from what I remember. Yes. Well, dude, thank you for doing this such last minute, to be fully open. Like I haven't been keeping up with a lot of stuff going on in the UFO world as of late. I was in Canada for 3 months hunting ghosts, which you and I have to have a long conversation about very soon. Because I know you're into all of that stuff. But
absolutely.
Oh boy, a lot has been happening. Like I said, I caught your latest episode with Andy over on that UFO podcast. You broke down a lot of it. So we will probably cover a lot of that ground tonight as well. But there's a couple stories that kind of just broke. And I thought we would go through those. I haven't really prepared you for these ones. I'm going to put you on the spot. But yeah, how's that sound? Should we just kind of get into it?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm ready to share my opinion on Katy Perry's insect flying malfunction and, the two people at the Coldplay concert. Let's go for it.
Oh my God, dude. I almost was going to say I feel bad for them, but why would I feel bad for two people having infidelities, right? It just doesn't make sense.
It feels like a big internet pile-on, but at the same time, they kind of brought it on themselves, right?
They did. And I am loving the recreations that everyone are doing right now. If we can make light of a situation like that, I think that's all we can do as a society.
Yeah, right. That's what will bring us together.
Exactly. Katy Perry, you mentioned celebrities. I've got one for you. You want to hear about a celebrity who just came forward with a childhood UFO sighting?
Ooh, do tell.
All right. Here you go. Hold on. I think I have an image here. Tell me if this one looks familiar.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Did you hear about this
press tour? No, I didn't.
Yeah,
I didn't.
Okay. Winona Ryder. Yes, Stranger Things season 5 is going to be coming out soonish, I believe. They started dropping trailers for it. I think they're doing like a
Yeah.
2-part thing and then a
3.
movie or 3 parts.
November 25th for part 1, then the second part like halfway through November, and then the finale on New Year's. It really ringing it out for this for this ending.
Wow. Okay. Are you a fan? Do you watch Stranger Things?
I do, but I'm kind of ready for it to be done at this point. It just feels like a bunch of things I watched in the 80s and 90s done less well, and the kids are like 30-year-olds playing 15-year-olds now. So it's like let's wrap this up, guys.
Yeah, I totally understand. It took them forever to get the last season out. And then you're right. I've seen them on the press tour, and some of those guys have bigger mustaches than I could ever dream to have at this point. It's crazy, dude. Crazy, crazy. But yeah, during an interview with I believe it was a science fiction magazine or a movie magazine, Winona Ryder dropped that she had what she believes to be 2 UFO experiences, one of which she didn't really talk about, but it was kind of like a dream situation where it kind of coincided with some of the dreams that characters in Stranger Things had had. So really interesting. Yeah, like the kind of like, I guess, fiction bleeding into reality for her at some point. Yeah, that was interesting. However, this is the one that stuck out to me. I've got the exact quote here. I've had 2 experiences. Once, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, me, my brothers, and my sister were sleeping on the roof, and we think we saw a UFO. There was a boomerang going back and forth, but it could have really been anything. It could have been a light or something else, but we were convinced that it was a UFO. So that was it. I mean, there's not a huge story here.
I wish the interviewer like followed up there. Like when she says it could have been a light, but it was a boomerang moving back and forth. Those 2 things aren't similar. There's a light above me now. It's not a boomerang moving back and forth, you know?
Well, what I love about this too, Ed, is like she called it a boomerang, and what do boomerangs do? You know, they literally come back and forth. So I don't know. And it kind of, I'm not gonna lie, dude. I think this is synchronistic that you're on the show. It kind of reminded me of your feather-like UFO experience.
The falling. I describe it as like a falling leaf. Yeah, like do you want me to recount it just for in case people didn't see it? So this happened many years ago. I would go out the back garden at like 10 p.m. just put my sunbed out, and I would just lay there with a cup of coffee or tea and just watch the sky, headphones on, listening to music. And I saw this light. I thought it was a satellite, you know, sitting outside watching the sky that much. You kind of become familiar with what's up there. So looked like a satellite, or the International Space Station kind of came over the horizon, and it went slowly until it reached kind of, you know, the apex of its orbit there. And then once it hit that, it stopped for a few seconds. And then when I kind of, you know, realized what was happening and that it stopped and kind of went, oh, this is not a satellite. They don't do that. It started falling like a falling leaf off a tree, like just wafting back and forth like a feather, like you say. And it was dramatic as well, because I put my, I know people say that your eyes kind of make micro movements and it can make lights in the sky look like they're doing that. But I put my thumb up and it was clearing each side of my thumb as it was falling, kind of going side to side there. So it was a dramatic distance that it was kind of, you know, swinging. And then as it hit the horizon, and bear in mind, you know, I lived in a bungalow at the time, big field behind me. So I could see the whole sky, you know, both horizons. And as it kind of got to the roof of my house, or disappearing behind the roof of my house, I should say, it went from where it was, shot across the sky and went north. So it cleared the whole sky and disappeared north in about second and a half. It was just gone. Whew. And just one of those things that, like, I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's aliens or if it's crazy technology. I know, as far as I know, we don't have any technology that moves that way and does that in space, right? Or even airplanes that kind of do that. And then the speed at the end as well. It was crazy. My jaw was on the floor, you know? And then I'll give you a little bit extra that I often don't tell about this story because it makes people kind of go, oh, it's too woo for me. But right after the light disappeared over the horizon, I looked back to where it was about to disappear over the top of my house, and 4 owls in a triangle formation flew right over me into the field behind me. And That's crazy because owls don't fly in formation. It was just
No,
one of
they're
those,
usually
the
alone. Yeah,
owls are not what they seem.
Yep. Oh my gosh, yes, good Twin Peaks reference. Wow, dude, have you spoken to Mike Cleland at all about this?
I
The Howler guy?
haven't.
Okay.
Really want to because I love his work. I know his connections to Mactoni's. Both of those would be at my UFO dinner party. I know I asked for that on that UFO podcast, but both are on my list. They'd be incredible.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I'll get you in touch with Mike. He's
Amazing.
brilliant. Yeah, and he's always taken down stories that, not even have to do with UFOs. Now he's taking stories that are just like anomalous experiences that happen with owls, which again is just incredible.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I look forward to talking to him and sharing my story, and maybe he'll have something to give back, or I can contribute to his archive.
Yep, that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about. Guys, if you want to read about Dan's story, I got to do it. Shameless plug. It is available in my latest book. It's from like 4 years ago now at this point. But Stories from Somewhere in the Skies. You can read about Dan's story in depth, and I don't know, hundreds of others in their third book coming soon. I'll have more information on that very soon. Yeah.
You'll have to tell me about that, like off the record. But that book, it's a very fond memory of me. I remember I sent you a recording that I took whilst walking along a beach in Mexico while I was just following synchronicities for a few months. And yeah, I recorded it on the beach, and it was this long thing. And I just thought, oh wow, I can just take this walk in the sunshine, watch the paragliders, watch, the whales in the ocean, and you couldn't hear a word of it. So I had to record it again for you because the wind was so bad, right?
I do remember, I'm like, Dan, I appreciate the vulnerability and how raw it was, but dude, I couldn't hear you. But hey, it happens. I've had people, in their most vulnerable moments send me these audio recordings. They're so nervous. They've never talked about their UFO sightings to anybody. And, it breaks my heart when I have to say to them, your dog barked in the background the entire time. Could we try a take two? It's hard. It's hard when you're trying to produce audio content. But,
yeah. And you'll have the same experience. You do TV shows. So sometimes you'll say something and they'll ask you to say it again. And it's just hard to muster the same enthusiasm and sincerity, so you got to wait for the right moment to kind of do these things.
Yeah. And I'll tell a really quick story. This is funny because you and I both filmed with Ancient Aliens at the same time,
That's right,
actually, in London. I remember we were like rooms apart in the hotel, but both of us were like, I love you, but I have so much studying to do for tomorrow. Like,
yeah, right. They make you do homework, right? Like people think you just rock up and say a bunch of like nonsense and they put it on the show. Nope. That's not how it is at all. They're so good and so understanding and so patient. And I love talking to the crew every time I'm there about what they think about UFOs, because they're not necessarily into the subject because they're filming. They're just doing a job, right? And it's really interesting, all the people you get to meet through doing that.
Right. Well, yeah. And the reason I was bringing that up is I remember I was filming with them once, and it was Christmas time. And
that's right.
There was a department store right across the street from where we were filming. And every 5 minutes, this motorized Santa would come out in front of the department store and start singing, and they'd play Christmas carols. So every 5 minutes, we would have to stop filming and wait for Santa to sing his song, and then go back in to the darkness. I don't know where he went, but I just remember the director getting so mad and being like, he was just like, I have never hated Christmas more in my life. The stories we could tell, my friend. But yeah. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. Winona Ryder had a childhood UFO sighting. I love when celebrities come forward with these things. It again normalizes this topic for everyone. It shows that everyday people are having these sightings. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. It's an equalizer, right? We look out at the world and it's chaos, and you got people different caring about different things. We've got essentially a class war going on, and in the middle of that, little things like this of rich or poor, billionaire or millionaire, everyone seems to have experiences. Like whoever's taking people or coming to look at people does not care about their financial situations or their social background.
Yeah, that's such a good point. UFOs are the great equalizer. They truly are. This story's kind of cool, man. I talked to you a little bit off air about this, but I'll give you the rundown about what's going on over in Germany, of all places. This story came to us from Suzanne, our moderator, guys, who I will add is in the chat with you all night. So be sure to send her some love. And she'll be taking your questions and comments as well tonight. But the university at Würzburg and the German FAA have teamed up, Dan, on UAP reporting. So I'm going to read this really quick for you. The University of Würzburg, I hope I'm saying that right, and the Luftfahrt Bundesamt are cooperating in researching unusual phenomena in airspace. Pilots can now report relevant observations to the university. There are many reports from pilots who have cited unknown flying objects or strange lights or weather phenomena in the atmosphere while flying. And despite numerous credible sightings, much is still unknown about the nature and origin of a lot of these. So the person quoted here is Hakan Kayel, professor of space technology and head of the Interdisciplinary Research Center for Extraterrestrial Studies. Wow. He says this, Dan. Systematic investigations are crucial in order to collect reliable data, analyze it scientifically, and gain sound knowledge from it. Among other things, the IFEX is dedicated to scientific research into UAP to gain new knowledge in this field. The research center has recently set up a website where pilots can report unusual observations. The German Luftfahrtbundesamt. Oh my god, dude! I can't do German.
You're doing well.
German.
If it was Welsh,
Okay.
I could help you out, but
I know.
I'll be just the same.
I wish it was Welsh. They support this approach. It will therefore set up a link to the website on their website, and that's where these reports will go, which is so cool. So, like, that would be like the equivalent of the United States FAA basically being like, all right, pilots, let's take down this report of what you did instead of like just putting it out in the ether or getting rid of it as they used to do. Now giving it to this university to start to compile these things and create a data set like a lot of different organizations are doing right now. Let me see if there's anything else here. Oh, okay. As the website expands, it will also integrate and enable the upload of images and videos. So it's not just going to be, a couple paragraphs about what happened. There will be a place to upload actual video and photographic evidence of these things too. So yeah, man, what do you make of this? Germany's getting in on the UAP game now.
I love this. Oh, I know we're going to be talking about Canada as well. But I think this is the way forward, right? Everyone's currently waiting for government stuff, and that's great. I think there's a lot of people on planet Earth who would need to hear it from governments, but a lot of us that have been in this a long time don't trust the governments when it comes to this. So there are other ways to do this, right? We can do citizen science, we can do the FAA being transparent, but we need objective data collection, and that's going to feed into inspiring the next generation. Like you said, with Winona Ryder's sighting, it's becoming normalized. We're seeing this in so many different facets of life, so many different countries now, where people just talk about this stuff. And if we've got a good objective data set, that means we can actually make progress to solving it, right? And we kind of need every country to do this to get a good picture of what's going on. I'm excited for this as well because I know there were the drone incursions over the German bases over the past few years, while it was happening in the US as well and in the UK. So whether that was anomalous or not, I think it will plug into this and it will plug that kind of, what would we call it, like a sensor gap, things they can't detect or things they can't take down. And it's what we need to do. What I love about it being transparent as well and being public facing is that it's talking to the people who usually make conspiracy theories to fill these gaps. If we look at stuff like Andrew Tate, Epstein, all these things, the information isn't forthcoming. So people just come up with theories, they fill gaps on them, and it gets dangerous, right? You end up with QAnon and crap like that happening. And that's not just about, oh yeah, there's a conspiracy theory online. Like, people lost their lives because of that, because they had psychosis, and it would lead them to do actions that they wouldn't normally do. So this is a way to combat the conspiracy kind of narrative, like the worst part of it, and to stop that growing. I think that's what frustrates me so much with the DoD, the Department of Defense in the US, when they won't talk. And it's like, okay, cool. So the gap is there. So people are going to make up nonsense about it, and you're going to get frustrated about it when it's your fault in the first place. More transparency like this would be great.
I love that, man. Yeah, I think Germany and Canada, as we will talk about in a minute, are a prime example of transparency. Now, no one's perfect. There's obviously things they cannot share because of national security. We understand that. Like, we all say that all the time. Like, yeah, we want some sort of disclosure, but we understand, like, there are things that need to be kept for national security, for sure. But it gets to the point, where, and John Greenwald of the Black Vault has brought this up so many times, that it gets to an overclassification where everything becomes classified and they can use that excuse. So yeah, that fine line is, I think, where a lot of us like to tread and hope to continue treading. But I'm not gonna lie, man, like, there's times where I'm like, just give us everything. I don't care. But
let me ask you a question while you
please
said
do,
that.
please.
So if someone come to you dressed like a classic man in black, and said, Ryan, we've been watching your show for a long time. We are happy to tell you what's going on, but you have to stop the show and you can't tell anybody. Would you accept their invitation, or would you be like, nah, I like doing it as an open conversation? Or like, what would you do?
Oh, I love these hypotheticals. Someone actually asked Suzanne and I this last week on the show. They're like,
Really?
If you got offered $1 million to, like, get the truth, but you had to disinform the public, because we were talking a lot about the disinformation that was brought forward by the Wall Street Journal and the work of Rick Doty in the past and stuff like that. And I think Suzanne and I both agreed, no, we would not do it. And that's not like an altruistic, like, yeah, like it was more of like, why would we even trust them to, like, tell
That's
us
me as
the
well.
truth anyways?
I'd be like, I'd shut the show down, and then they'd ignore me and not return my emails, and then I'd be all compromised, and people would say my character was. It's just not worth going down that road, right?
Right. Well, okay. So if they asked me you got to shut down your wrestling podcast, I might consider it. I might consider. No offense to my co-host Andrew Sanford, I love him to death, and I love our show. But yeah. Maybe if that was the case, but yeah. What about you? You also
no.
would not. Yeah.
No, I think, like you said, sometimes late at night, I'm like, yeah, I take it, I do it. I'd want to know, but it would eat me inside for the rest of my life that I couldn't tell anyone about this. It's almost pointless. Like, yeah, great, I know, but I can't tell anyone, and that's what I want out, is the truth. It would contradict everything we've been working for what, like, since 2017, right? Basically, maybe longer.
And I mean, you look at some of these individuals who have, quote unquote, been given the truth, and in return they were told they couldn't tell anybody, or they had to put small disinformations out to the UFO community. Bill Moore is the prime example. Even it ate away at him so much that he eventually came clean at a UFO conference, and the dude got chased off the stage and never showed his face again in ufology, because
there you go.
Oh, they were ready, man. They were ready to bring out those pitchforks for him. So yeah. I don't know. Tell Suzanne and Ryan all the shoes and millions of dollars to work for us. We are working on a bigger deal for both. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Well, you brought up Canada. That's our big story, I think, of the week in terms of good stuff. We're starting with the good news, because we got some depressing news, I think, in the UFO field that we're going to kind of get to in a little bit, but we got to get emotionally ready for that. But let's start with this awesome story out of Canada, Dan. We got, finally, the Canadian UAP report from Sky Canada. I'm going to read a little bit here. I've got a clip I'm going to show of an interview that Chris Rutkowski did recently. He's like the premier UFO researcher in Canada. He did an interview for CTV, and I've got some exclusive quotes that Chris sent me. He's actually, this is hilarious. I was going to have him on to talk about this story on the podcast, but he said, I'm on my way to Falcon Lake, which is where the famous close encounter happened, in Falcon Lake. And I'm like, what? Only you would be on your way to, like, the Rendlesham of Canada, the Roswell of Canada, while I ask you to be on the show to talk about this. But yeah, I've got some quotes from him, but let's talk a little bit about this. Canadian UAP report has been released. The government's top scientist has released a new report on UFOs. The report comes to us from the Office of the Chief Science Advisor of Canada, and they recommend the creation of a new federal body to standardize, collect, and investigate UFO reports. Known as the Sky Canada Project, the Office of the Chief Science Advisor of Canada launched its UAP research effort in 2022 and released a preliminary report in January. For those who don't know, the chief scientist is cardiovascular scientist Dr. Mona Niemer. And she has been Canada's chief science advisor since the role was created. And she was tasked with providing impartial scientific advice to the government. And Niemer reports directly to the Prime Minister and Minister of Innovation, Science, and Industry. So what I'm going to do here, Dan, is I'm going to play this clip. And it's Chris talking about why he thinks this is a really good idea. And we do have to keep in mind, Chris is like the person that they get all their UAP reports from. You know, these aren't just magically showing up on the doorstep of this chief science advisor. They go and look for them. They use what's out there and what's readily available to the public. And that is the work of Chris Rutkowski and several of his colleagues. So I'll go ahead and play this clip, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Sound good?
Sure.
Okay.
Top scientist has released a report on UFOs. It recommends the government establish a new federal agency to collect and investigate UFO sightings. Here to talk about what an agency might do and why it might be useful is Chris Rutkowski. He is a science writer and author of Canada's UFOs Declassified. Good to have you with us tonight from Winnipeg, Chris. You hear that from a top scientist in this country, that we should have a federal agency looking at this, and you think what?
I think it's a good idea. It's been more than 30 years since the Canadian government has had an office where people could report things seen in the sky. And, science is taking the subject a lot more seriously, and Canada's science community has played a big part in so many factors and so many other genres. Why not this one?
How many UFO sightings would there be annually in Canada? Do we know?
Well, this report did use my own data, which we produced with the Canadian UFO Survey every year. Somewhere between 750 and 1,000 separate UFO reports, or UAP reports, depending on how you'd like to use them these days. But they come from coast to coast to coast. From average citizens to pilots, air traffic controllers, RCMP. If you've seen one, you're in good company. Something like 1 in 10 Canadians believe they've seen a UFO.
And what would a central body do? Why would it be useful?
Well, right now, it's not even clear where to report something. If you've seen something, Transport Canada accepts reports from pilots, and there are quite a few reports from pilots. The RCMP at one time used to collect information and investigate cases on behalf of the National Research Council. The National Research Council moved on to Canadian Space Agency, which is now more focused on Canadarms and involvement with space exploration. So not as involved anymore. There's not really a place to report them. So even collecting the cases is quite a challenge.
So if you had a body or a federal agency for UFOs, would you put that under the Canadian Space Agency, and would that go a great distance to lend credibility to the study of these?
Well, the Sky Canada project suggested that the Canadian Space Agency might be the place to do it. The trouble is that most people who see objects in the sky say that they're very close to them, close to the ground in some cases. And that's a long way from space, so it may not be the best body. And yet, right. Scientific expertise says, we need something. Also, the fact that a lot of cases are reported, with regard to national defense. We've had things shot down by American jets. Another Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the east coast of the United States. And that suggests there's something going on in our atmosphere rather than anywhere else. So out of context of defense and safety for passengers and as well for science, we have to have something contributing to the community here in Canada.
Chris, what would this do in terms of transparency? I think of the X-Files and that the truth is out there and there's a lot of speculation about what government knows, what it doesn't know, what it chooses to share with the public, and what it hangs on to. Would this alleviate any of that?
As a matter of fact, that's one of the recommendations in this report, is for greater transparency. Not only greater transparency, but increased public information, access to information, reducing the stigma of people who have seen objects in the sky, and getting the scientific community on board to perhaps even discuss it within the hallowed halls. So the idea is to get more information, have it more accessible, and to relate it back to the Canadian public. And there's a great demand for this information. The United States, of course, is all over this with congressional hearings and so forth, but we don't get much in the way of cases and information about reports. Canada has been relatively transparent. We have a full record of things seen in the sky from 1947 right till the present. So, we're actually ahead of the United States in this regard.
Is there any country that does what's being suggested here? That any nation that has an agency that keeps track of those numbers? Is this something that Canada could lead, in terms of the science element of it?
Well, Canada did lead up until the mid-90s when the RCMP mandate to investigate on behalf of the National Research Council was completed. So, we did have that responsibility and that capability. We don't have that anymore. France actually has a government liaison, an agency that does work with the public and understanding what things are being seen in the French skies. Not many others, go to it the way we can. And this report suggests in very, very detailed ways how Canada can become a world leader in trying to understand what people are seeing in the skies.
There's been a lot of talk about increasing the military. Certainly the high Arctic is a part of that. It would be more surveillance of our skies. Might that play into this somewhat? It would certainly dovetail nicely, you would think.
It would, and in fact, the Canada Science Advisor reports directly to the Prime Minister, and if she's recommending that something more be done with regard to surveillance of things in our skies, I'm hoping that he would take her advice, because there is concern about sovereignty, there's concern about national defense as well. This could easily fall within a defense budget, because the United States, they're really concerned about that in the sense of what is going on. Are they foreign intrusions? Are there drones and so forth? We've had some of that in Canada, and some of it has been investigated. But to have a coordinated effort across all agencies, National Defense, RCMP, and Transport Canada and so forth, that would be a big step and would certainly assist us in relating to other countries concerned about defense and security.
Okay, so coordinated effort is what I took from that, man. Coordinated effort, scientific, transparency. So where do we begin? What did you make of what this report presumably was about, these recommendations that have been made, and what Chris had to say there?
So I think, first of all, we have to highlight, Chris Witkowski and Daniel Otis in Canada. They've been pushing for something like this for years now, and hats off to them. Here it is. They've gone from just these UFO kooks that write books and try and be taken seriously to now being part of an actual government effort and report on behalf of Canada, which is awesome. I think it just goes to show, if we have the conversation in the right way and we present this in the right way, then there's really no reason for the government to turn their nose up at it. Essentially, what we're asking is for gaps in the defense systems against other countries so that they can secure their skies to be plugged. And it happened a few years back, right, when the Chinese balloon got shot down in the US. Yeah. And then supposedly they opened the apertures on the radar. They found a bunch more objects that they said were pico balloons and other mysterious things. And one of them was in Canada. And there was even a report afterwards talking about something called UAP 23 that US and Canada coordinated on dealing with. So there's clearly a relationship there, but the US isn't being so transparent. And we just, they've lost all of our trust. So everyone loves Canadians. They're polite, they're forthcoming, they're sincere. A Canadian UFO investigation would be the nicest thing I think that could happen to this subject. It would just be straight shooting, no one arguing, no trolls, nothing like that. I welcome the efforts. The host in that show, I think, is worth talking about as well. He was so amenable and open to hearing about it and talking about it seriously that I think we finally gotten to a point where it's understood that we're not saying it's aliens, we're saying something is there. People are seeing something. We have to take this seriously, because if something that wanted to do something bad, it could do so, right? And so it's probably best to just, shore up those defense systems so that nothing can come through. It's part of what we want as the UAP community, that, full spectrum awareness over each country, and they can see what's coming into their borders and talk about it. Like I said, there are ways to have this conversation, and the way Chris is having it is just outstanding. Very objective, what I would call a UAP centrist. I'm sure he has some opinions on some cases that would make people paint him as a skeptic, but he's here, he's doing the work, he wants to get to this answer, and he wants the rest of us to get this answer too. I have no doubt that Chris would not take the money, and he would not stop doing what he's doing if they said they tell him the secret. But yeah, let's get those sensors out there. Canada has so much isolated space. And if you were visiting a planet and there was a civilization there, you would probably spend a lot of time in those isolated spaces. So let's get sensors there. Let's see what's there. Let's see if there are underground bases or anything, near the Arctic, Alaska, or anything like that. And just get the data out so that people understand, look up, see something, say something.
Exactly, man. Yeah, you bring up so many good points too, and I think, again, to stress that this will be made public. Now, the biggest frustration, like you mentioned, that we have in the United States is the lack of transparency by the one office that is supposed to be investigating UFOs, and that is AARO, which we will be talking a lot about very shortly.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, this is so exciting. I put up some quotes that Chris sent to me directly a couple hours ago. You can read them if you're watching this on YouTube. I will post all of his quotes on our social media as well, because he did have some additional things. But most of what he has said in these quotes was what he said in this interview. So I highly recommend people go check out the work of Chris Rutkowski, and just, go check out CTV. They've been doing a lot of coverage about the UAP report. The one thing, Dan, that frustrated me with this UAP report is, just like AARO, we didn't get any of the cases that Sky Canada has been looking at. Now, again, I understand these are recommendations to give to the Prime Minister, to give to the military, to give to everyone throughout Canada, and make this a more cohesive thing. But we didn't get to look at any of those cases. I mean, I guess we could through the work of Chris Rutkowski. I guess he could share a lot of them. But yeah, what do you make of that whole idea that we didn't get a single case in here?
It would, it's weird to say, because the UK isn't really engaged with this current UAP conversation at all. You ask anything about UAP or anomalous things in the sky, and they just say the MOD's position is we don't believe in extraterrestrials. It's like, no one asked about extraterrestrials, guys. Can you calm down? But the UK produced a report not too long ago, I think, early 2000s, around 2010, where David Clark worked with the National Archives to declassify a lot of the reports that went into this overall report. And you can go read them all, and there are so many fascinating cases. And if I remember correctly, some of those even kind of became big deals, right? That's where we first saw the, I forgot what it was. It was like a copy of view prints, I think it was, they called it, of the Calvin image. And it was black and white. It was crappy. It was the first place we saw that. And so that's where David got the bug for that case. And then years later, he found the photo, right? Seeing the cases on their own allows us to do that investigation. That Calvin investigation is still going. They're trying to find the person who took the photo and so on and so forth. But it's made waves since it came out. It's, many people call it like the best UFO photo ever released. And that came from the UK government being a little transparent about the actual reports. And so I think it's important to do, even if it's just chucking it on a website and making it so people can just look through it on a PDF. Ideally, though, it would be a very modern website where we can click like things in the sky, things in the sea, things in space, different shapes, and kind of filter things that way. But yeah, I agree with you. They should be out there. And the trouble, if we go to look at Chris's reports for the sourcing, obviously his stuff contributed, but there might be one or two cases that were in there that are very compelling. That UAP 23 one, where if that's talked about in there, that's really important to hear about for the public. So a really good start from them, I think. But let's get more of these single reports out there instead of just relying on goddamn Enigma.
Yeah, we covered that story a couple weeks ago.
Sure.
Anyways, so the other one thing I want to touch on with this story, Dan, is saying that this will all be reported to or given to the Canadian Space Agency. Now, we know, again, I know I use America as the example, but that's really anyone who's been really looking into the UAP topic in the past few years, at least, forward facing. And that is, NASA. Like there was that NASA UAP thing where just people just destroyed that thing. And,
went
AARO
nowhere.
met with, exactly. AARO met with NASA. There was this Five Eyes meeting that took place. All that stuff happened. What do you make of all of this stuff going to the Canadian Space Agency? As Chris pointed out, like a lot of UAP does not happen in space. It happens, pretty low to the ground too. So like who should be looking at it from that standpoint, not just the Canadian Space Agency, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You need, in the US, they with AARO, whatever you think of them, very early on, they said, the Navy have to contribute, the Air Force has to contribute, NASA has to contribute, because all of these domains have these anomalous kind of things appear and happen. And so I would hope that the Canadian Space Agency will look at this and kind of go, yeah, a lot of that's not really us. We're looking outward, so we need an organization or at least an office within the space agency that looks downward as well. I know there's an argument as well that space agencies, they'll put satellite ups that point at the Earth and they'll track vegetation and water and ice melting for flood warnings and things like that. But I think because so many of these sightings happen within our atmosphere or in the ocean, that 2/3 of the space agency's remit is not their area of expertise. So they can look after that third if they want, but those other organizations need to come in and share their expertise as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Cool. Well, again, like I've got all these quotes from Chris, but I think I'll put them on our social media to sort of save time here as we cover more with you since we have you here. So I'll put those up, guys. I'll put links to them and everything after this as well. But anything else with the Canadian UAP report before we move on to our good buddies
just
over at AARO?
Applause. Well done,
Yeah.
Canada.
As usual.
No more.
Well done,
yeah,
Canada.
As usual. Keep going. Keep being Canada.
Please keep being Canada, my second home at this point. But okay. So we mentioned AARO, and we had some news come out about AARO this week. You guys had this man on That UFO podcast not too long ago, and that was Tim Phillips, the former Deputy Director of AARO. And he has been on kind of an interview run as of late, whether it was with you guys, it was with the New York Post, there were other podcasts he went on, Podcast UFO. He's been starting a lot of conversations in the UFO field, some good, some bad, but at the end of the day, here we are, Dan. The man got fired 2 months before he was supposed to retire. I cannot think of a shittier way to go out than for this to happen. But let me read this quick. According to his LinkedIn, he actually put a post out on his LinkedIn about this, and a follow-up by Stephen Greenstreet over at the New York Post. Former Deputy Director of AARO, Tim Phillips, has been fired by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, effective immediately, only about 2 months before his retirement. This is after he's been going on a handful of podcasts, and I believe he was even interviewed for the Wall Street Journal article, or 2-part articles that came out somewhat recently, he and Sean Kirkpatrick. And he's been saying a lot of things, man, whether it was, MJ-12 or planting government-made UFO videos and photos at Area 51, or these hazing rituals the Air Force was doing with these UFO crash retrieval programs. He's been saying a lot. And this week, he was fired. So my question for you is, are these two things related?
Well, so the plot thickens, right? I don't know if you saw that Tim Phillips posted again yesterday. So that reporting came out from Green Street. And he said he's been fired, and it sounds really bad there, right? Like, kicked out on his ass from the job. Yeah. However, after Green Street posted this, Tim Phillips posted to LinkedIn saying, and I'll just read this to you because I think it's important to get across the tone to kind of be able to discuss it. Tim posted, "Yesterday was my last day as a federal government employee after a combined 45 years of military and federal service. Today, I received the Secretary of Defense Civilian Career Service Medal for exceptional civilian service. I'm grateful to my wife and family who supported my career despite the frequent PCS moves, TDYs, and overseas deployments. It was an honor to serve with so many truly exceptional military intelligence community and federal law enforcement professionals throughout my career. I'll miss your company, the national security mission, and most importantly, your friendship. I'm grateful to have served my country. I look forward to my next adventure and spending time with my family and friends." So I saw that on LinkedIn and I was like, whoa, that's like a 180 in tone from what Stephen Greenstreet has posted. Like, do they give medals to people that they fire as they're kicking them out the door? Like, what's going on? And I've since kind of found out that basically he seems to have accrued a lot of holiday. And so his retirement is coming up. I think it was like September, October. And so he's just used all of his holiday to kind of say, yeah, I'm out now. I'm on leave, essentially. So this is kind of muddy water. Again, Green Street saying that he got fired. However, he was given a medal. He still got his pension. It's just like almost like he brought his retirement forward as opposed to just being kicked out on his ass and losing all of those benefits. And I know before this, like, people were talking a lot like, what was it that he said that got him fired, But now I think that changes the game a little bit. It's like, oh, so we're meant to think he's been fired. We're meant to think he said something that was accurate and he got fired over it, but also he got given a medal and got to graciously walk out the door and take his retirement package. And, he's going to have the best life with like 2-3 houses and all the money he saved through his military pensions and things like that. So it's just left me with a whole bunch more red flags and questions than I had when even I read Green Street's post. Like I said, he got a medal. But the question is, do we trust Tim Phillips? Because the post I just read is from his LinkedIn, right? And his LinkedIn is where we've seen him disparage whistleblowers, disparage people reporting UFO sightings. And then he comes out on this podcast tour and he's being amicable and being nice and telling us about these majestic documents that they found and are supposedly real, and that the data bricks were taken from the Princeton, and that they found a materials acquisition program that they reported to Congress. But now I'm left in a place where I'm just thinking, which one of those bits of information was a lie? We've got to pick it apart now.
He's freaking Two-Face from Batman. Like, we don't know which side of Tim Phillips to believe or not. It's crazy, dude. I don't know. Like, he seems like a nice guy. Like, I could see him on a yacht, drinking some beers, fishing, listening to some, I don't know, God, you name it. Kenny Loggins. I don't know. That's the first person who came to my mind. I don't know why I said Kenny Loggins. But at the end of the day, like, he was a part of AARO who did this investigation and found all this stuff that was brought forward in the Wall Street Journal. We're all still trying to make sense of that entire thing. Now we don't know who to trust, who not to trust. And it's just so muddy, man. It's so muddy. And like, where do you stand on the whole Wall Street Journal thing? Do you believe what was said in those articles?
No, I believe there may have been 1 or 2 cases of some hazing happening or something like that. Service members being service members, drinking too much and having a bit of fun. But this has come up before with the Rendlesham case as well, that, supposedly someone dragged this huge model to the front gate of, I forget the something bridge. Rendlesham, help me out.
The bridge.
The military base.
Oh, oh my God. Bentwaters and Woodbridge. There we go.
Woodbridge. There you go. That's what I was
Woodbridge.
thinking of. Yeah, that's supposedly one team of Americans from the other base dragged over this big model of a satellite that was used for like war games and training over to the gate of the other place and pretended that there was this big thing happening, and supposedly the idea is that this led to the Rendlesham that we know, with the halt tapes and things like that, which again, I think is nonsense. Like, you listen to those halt tapes and it's clear there's not a model at the front gate, right? Something was going on. But it's a strange one because Wall Street Journal, millions of subscribers, but also how many are going to read UFO stuff, right? And there's a paywall there. So it was almost like it was put out to annoy the community, because the people that were going to read it, unless you're involved in this day to day, you don't really care about what they're saying. It's like, okay, you haven't covered this consistently for the past few years. Like, this is out of the blue, and it's really strange that it's kind of come out. So for me, I put it in my like little data pile, but I put a red flag in the top and raise my eyebrow and back away from it like it's nuclear,
Yeah, you're right, though. I didn't even think about that. Like, those Wall Street Journal articles came out like in a time where like a lot of things were going on in the world, much more important things than the Wall Street Journal's coverage of UFOs. Let's be completely honest. But yeah, these things always seem to come out on like a Friday or like a holiday, and you do have to wonder if that is on purpose. So
yeah. Well, that's the idea, right? You drop the bad news on the Friday, and then the news can't pick it up over the weekend because everyone's out busy doing stuff. But I would like there to be transparency, but I don't think we're going to see this from this administration for sure, given what's happening with the Epstein files. Who can trust anything that comes from them after all of this?
Good point. Very, very good point. I think a lot of people in the chat agree with you on that as well, my friend.
I know there will be some that don't, but I would beg them to just objectively look at the landscape and see that not all is as we're being told it is.
Yep, it never is. It never is. Okay, you mentioned transparency, and there's been a lot recently in terms of the UAPDA. Let's move to that. The Disclosure Act. We've got the UFO hearing that was postponed. It was supposed to happen this month in July as we're recording this. However, it has been possibly pushed back to September. And the other big thing to kind of come out of that were some statements made by Anna Paulina, who is a big, part of all of this in getting these hearings going. She's got her weird, like, what is it called? Secrets Task Force or whatever?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I
Super
don't even...
duper secret squirrel task force.
That sounds... I think that's exactly it, actually. Yes, thank you. All this to say, she basically said, we're having a lot of trouble getting these witnesses. Like, we thought this is their time. Like, this is their time to come forward. The people who worked on the programs, this, that, like, we're giving you the platform to do it. And they're either backing out or they're just saying, no, the protection is not there for us to do this yet. And that's important to keep in mind too. I want to play a quick clip, Dan. This video came out just a couple hours ago from the Soul Foundation, where Scoffish over at the Soul Foundation interviewed Eric Burlinson, who was another big proponent of this stuff going on recently. And he had an interesting thing to say about the kind of controversy behind some of the stuff Luna was saying, that like these whistleblowers, they got, skiff flu back when they were doing these skiff meetings. They just didn't show up for them. And now we're trying to do this congressional hearing and get the people who actually worked on the secret retrieval programs, have seen the bodies, have touched the craft, and they're saying, no, we don't want to come testify. But I found this answer interesting by Eric Burlinson. So I'll play that. And then, yeah, let's dive into a lot of this stuff. Is that cool?
Cool. Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, here we go.
Goal on disclosure is not to do these things behind closed doors.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, it's not. Let me just upload it quick here.
The goal on disclosure is not to do these things behind closed doors, not to be, get in a skiff. That's really not our goal. Our goal is to get as much information out to the American people as possible. We've had some good hearings so far. The first hearing that I was able to be a part of was the one with David Grush, which was I think a historic moment and an amazing hearing. We also heard, we had a second hearing with Lou Elizondo and others. But both those hearings were fantastic. But a guy like me from the Show Me State, I'm still at a place where the testimony that I've heard is interesting, and I'm willing to listen. But I'm doing so with a very skeptical and jaundiced view because I don't trust people. I don't trust this government, and until I see it, I'm from Missouri. You're going to have to show me, and so that for me, that's why I'm on this track. I feel compelled to try to get to that point where I finally get an answer, which is why our second hearing, or this hearing that we're going to do, is going to get us a little bit closer because we're seeking and trying to get people in that hearing that are firsthand witnesses, people that have had encounters, that have had their hands on material, that in their official capacity working for the federal government.
Okay, that would again be historic, like you said about Dave Grush's testimony in the 2023 hearing. How confident are you that those kind of witnesses will be able to come forward for this hearing?
It's not easy. It's really not. Some of them that we've reached out to have refused to come in. They don't find the value. They have come forward before, and or in private or in skiffs, and they're not seeing action. I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to take this topic seriously, and trying to treat it like I did in the private sector, where you have milestones, you have goals, you have things that you actually can achieve, and so that hopefully will give more people the confidence to come forward and be willing to come to a public hearing. We're not being totally shut out. We will have some people that are witnesses, but it is not easy to convince somebody to come forward.
All right. This is like a 45-minute interview. I highly suggest people go watch it over at the Soul Foundation's YouTube channel. But this is just the first clip I pulled in. It literally came out as I was getting ready for the live stream, so I'm sure there were a lot of other good tidbits. But I thought this would connect to the latter half of our conversation, is this next UAP hearing. Now, like we had said earlier, we heard that it got pushed back, which sucks. We all want it now. But maybe this is for a good reason. If they rushed it, maybe the witnesses that they would have testified wouldn't be as good as we had hoped. Maybe they're really pushing. Maybe they're waiting for something legally. These whistleblower protections. Maybe they're working on something behind the scenes when it comes to that. But what do you make of everything going on right now when it comes to the next UAP hearing? Let's start with that first.
So firstly, I'm stupidly excited for any UAP hearing that happens, but this one has been pushed back and back and back so much that I just refer to it as the quantum hearing now. It's clear they want it to happen, but it both is and isn't happening. The date they gave was September 1st, but it's holiday on September 1st, so they can't have it that day. It just seems like they're throwing stuff at the wall to try and make it stick at the moment. I really want a hearing with firsthand whistleblowers, but the who makes a big difference for me. Burleson there is saying all the right things, but he alone cannot protect whistleblowers. The infrastructure is against them. And I said this on that UFO podcast as well. If say, for example, they were getting me in to talk about my UFO report, right? The one that I told everyone about on here. If I was to show up and it's possible that people are being threatened, then I would want to make sure that what evidence I was presenting could blow the lid off the whole thing, that it was unequivocal, undeniable, categorically proved that we are not alone. Otherwise, I'm not running that risk at all. And so I have to ask, you know, who are these witnesses they're trying to bring in? Are they people who have absolute firsthand evidence that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, or are they just people with stories again that they're like, I can tell my story on a podcast or, you know, in a book or something like that, instead of risking their friends and family because they might be breaking an NDA or saying something they're not allowed to. You know, it's one thing for someone to threaten, say, me for doing something. But if they said, "Oh, I'm going to go after your wife or your wife's family or your friend's family, or they're sending me pictures of my friend's kids," like, I'm going to back off. That's, you know, I don't have anything that's worth putting those people at risk for. And so I can understand why the whistleblowers are reluctant, especially given how AARO has treated them in the past. I think it was Robert Salas that shared his recording of his AARO interview, and what he said and what they wrote in that report were very different. You know, it was almost like saying, yeah, take this report, ChatGPT, take everything incendiary out of it and sensational out of it, give me a 30-word summary of this, and that's what was in the report, which isn't fair on these people that had these experiences, whose careers were destroyed because they come forward to say they had these experiences. This is a big part of why I think the US don't want this to come out, because there's just going to be a reckoning. A lot of people are going to sue them. They'll want, you know, there were repercussions and their careers were cut short. They were affected mental health wise. Kevin Day is a great example of that. You know, he's really got his life together now, but it deeply affected him and changed him. And so there's just this reckoning in the future. If a whistleblower comes forward that can legitimately prove that the US has known this and hidden it for decades, you know, almost 100 years at this point, maybe even longer, the US doesn't want to deal with the political and criminal fallout, I think, of what they've been doing with this subject for, you know, all this time.
You know, yes, I agree with everything you just said. This is a really good comment right here that Amanda had. Hold on 1 minute. If whistleblowers don't feel the info they give will have action from Congress, the risk of them coming forward won't be worth it. Like you said, Dan, Congress has to show they'll put action behind their words. So yeah, I think you're right in terms of that. On the flip side, though, however, playing devil's advocate, something James Craig here said was interesting. They won't testify because they would be under oath and don't want to be held accountable. So we do have to look at the other side, that like if they did come forward to Congress, maybe they were less than truthful when they came out in an article, in a book, in an interview. And then finally, when they are under oath, quote unquote, like how under oath are they? That is the real question when they do these things. You know what I mean? You know,
just look
could
at,
they actually be perjury, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look at the confirmation hearings for the current administration. It's clear that you're allowed to lie whilst you're under oath, and you have no repercussions. So, what's it worth? You know, I can see why someone would back away and be like, no, you know what? That's a dog and pony show. I've got my answers. I know what happened to me. I don't need to prove it to anyone. Especially, you know, you look at someone like Chris Bledsoe, who's just had no end of just being accosted and mocked after coming out and sharing his initial story. Say what you want about, you know, his tours now and book and stuff like that, but it's clear there was an inciting incident and he was taken apart as a person for it. So I can understand why people are reluctant to share these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that kind of brings us to the UAPDA. Now, this is another big thing that Burlinson is pushing for as well. You guys talked about this on that UFO podcast a little bit. It is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it did not pass. It did not get put through. Was it this year or this upcoming year? Is that
so we're hearing different things actually this year. So Danny Sheehan is saying this year that it didn't get through. However, Burleson is saying that he's talking to rounds and they're trying to kind of incorporate it, and they want people to give them feedback so they can change it to make it better to pass. So we're hearing two different things, but there is a little language that has been kind of put in to the Senate Armed Services Committee report for the NDAA and stuff like that. One is just that they've now got to include the North American Aerospace Defense Command UFO data in the AARO reports, and they haven't had access to that. So they're going to have all of their data going back from January 1st, 2004. So that's a boatload of data. So the AARO is saying like, oh yeah, we have 10,000 cases a month. They're going to have like 50,000 next month, you know, when they incorporate this. There's also They want AARO to issue a consolidated security classification guidance matrix for programs related to UAP. So basically, if you're going to report UAP, you'll be able to understand what the report entails, where it will go after you make your report, follow-ups, all that kind of thing. Then there's just some revision on some language where it just emphasizes that all the information communicated has to be done in a manner that protects intelligence sources and methods. So that's just, the intelligence community looking after their own necks there. Yeah. And then after Andy and I recorded, there was actually some more that came out. So within less than 24 hours of us recording a 2-hour show talking about all this, there was more stuff that made it out of date immediately, because that's always the way it goes in UFO world, right? But that stuff just included new whistleblower provisions for protection for whistleblowers, which, great, but it's as good as the paper is written on, right? If they're not going to do anything about it. And then they also commended AARO and asked AARO to provide them with a 5-year plan to roll out their sensor systems, costs included, that kind of thing, so they can project a bit into the future and hopefully, put a pin in that funding for AARO to use to get their Gremlin system, which is the UAP tracking system, out into the field. They also wanted AARO to essentially say, look, this Gremlin covers X amount of the spectrum. We've got these other things that cover parts of the spectrum, but they want AARO to point out all the bits of spectrum coverage they don't have, so that they can start making sensors that cover those bits of the spectrum.
Okay. That's
which, pretty good stuff, but it's not the UAPDA. It's much more subtle. It's a bit more like, okay, there's a little bit of progress with I need to say Apple then, with AARO here. Apple don't have a UFO. Wouldn't surprise me if their
not yet
mothership in California was a UFO, though. Yeah, not yet, I think. But yeah, so it's a nice addition, but it doesn't look. It's not the UAPDA. And that's just, I guess, on its 3rd time lucky this year. So I don't know what happens to it if it doesn't pass this year. I wonder if maybe breaking it into different parts and passing each individual part as a bit of its own legislation would be better than kind of just this blanket thing. Mm-hmm. But there was also concern, Ross Coulthart, who we'll get to, had a chat with Senator Rounds not too long ago. And he asked Senator Rounds if the use of NHI, non-human intelligence language, in the UAPDA was because they knew something, that they knew a little more than the public did, that they knew where these programs were and they knew it was real and so on and so forth. And for that reason, I was a big advocate of the UAPDA. However, Senator Rounds said, no, we're just making sure we're plugging the loopholes in the language, and that's the language we're using because it's broader than extraterrestrial. So that was a little disappointing that they don't actually know any more than we do. At least Rounds says that he doesn't. And I want to see them turn this into actionable stuff, but I'm just seeing the usual politicking, the bumbling, does this work for my base? Can I get votes out of this? All that crap. And I just want someone to do what Burleson is saying he wants to do, but he alone cannot make a difference in that system.
Yeah, that's true. It takes an army for sure. 2 questions to play off of that for you before we get to Ross Coulthart, because I do want to get your thoughts on all of that. The FBI. Now, there's been a lot of chatter. I haven't been keeping up too much with all of it, but I know that there were apparently in those skiffs that took place, there were members of a group within the FBI that are now investigating UFOs. And it's almost like they're competing with AARO now in terms of like possible funding for further investigation. What do you think about the FBI getting involved with all of this?
On one hand, it tickles the child inside of me that grew up watching X-Files. Nobody down here but the FBI's most wanted. Yes, I want the FBI to have it for that reason, because I want to see who Fox Mulder really is. But at the same time, they're not transparent. We don't know who they are. We don't know what offer it is. We don't know what data they're looking at.
Sorry, I had to, buddy.
That.
I had
look
to.
at that. That's so cool. I met someone once that worked on the show, and at home they had one of the "I Want to Believe" posters from the actual wall of his office, and they were like, "It's our prized possession. If the house burnt down, this would be what we grab." And apparently, like, people would steal them on the crew all the time, which is why that poster changed a little bit for the reboot.
Okay.
Or the remake, the follow-on, sequel, I guess, whatever.
Whatever.
But yeah, it became like a triangle UFO, right? In that, so it changed because everyone was stealing the posters. They're out there. Go find them. yeah, correctly said that some senators, Paulina Luna was saying that she wanted AARO's funding to go to the FBI. For me, I don't know how functional that is, because they're not being transparent. There's no office that we can go to be like, how do we report a UFO sighting to an FBI? Like the infrastructure just doesn't seem to be there to take on those reports. I can understand why they're jumping off the back of AARO's investigation to look at the data, because it's domestic. If it's in the US, that's kind of their remit. But do I want even more faceless people taking over the UFO investigation? No, I do not.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Some people are bringing up in the chat, like, the only reason I could really see the FBI getting involved with this is from a criminal standpoint, in terms of these things David Grush has brought forward, that crimes have been committed, in terms of how these things, these SAPs are being dealt with in these crash retrieval programs and whatnot, that there are potential crimes that have been committed. Illegal things have occurred. Yes, Ryan, that's what
true.
crimes are. Wow, sorry. But it makes me wonder, maybe that's why
Sure.
they're getting involved. Which, yeah, dude, if there's some crimes going on with secret UFO programs, like, let's hold those people accountable. Or as has been mentioned in the whistleblower protection things, like, if crimes were committed and you are finally coming forward to admit that, like, maybe we'll waive whatever sentence that would be, or
Yeah.
what, like an immunity of some sort. I don't know.
Yeah, that would make sense to me if it was criminal. Of course, there's every chance that the aliens are just pilfering stuff when they come to Earth, right? They're just stealing cars and stuff.
Totally. Yeah, they're going to investigate the crimes of the aliens too. Yeah, all those abductions for the past 70 plus years. Yeah, every one of them, 10 years, go to jail, straight to jail. All right, FBI. What was the other thing I was going to ask you about the UAPDA? Oh, yes. Okay. Eminent domain.
Sure.
This was a huge part of the UAPDA. Personally, I think it's the dumbest thing that they could have put into the UAPDA. I do not support it. I will never support this idea that the government would have eminent domain of anything that is brought forward by, quote unquote, these whistleblowers, or they go retrieve the craft and that's it. We never hear about it again. So that, in that way, I am very happy that at least that is not going to happen now. But what do you make of this whole conversation about eminent domain when it comes to the UAPDA and whatnot? Maybe I just don't know enough about it. I don't know.
No, you're totally on the money, man. Like, of course, no one would want the government to be able to just come take your stuff, no matter what it is, whether it's alien stuff or whatnot. I know Brandon Fugel from Skinwalker Ranch was infamously against this as well, because he was like, if we find something, that's mine. That's on my property. We've done the investigation. They have no right to come and take it away from us. So no, I will not be supporting that. Totally understand his point. That is in legislation anyway. So if the US government wanted to do it, they could. So it's kind of weird that it's in there and spelt out in there, because it just seems really threatening and it's kind of useless. I think you could take that out. It could still happen if they wanted to do it anyway. But also it's not so scary, right? If they're a little bit more, we'll work with you on whatever you've got to look at it, as opposed to take it off you and you'll never see it again and it'll go into a black hole. I think something that might be better would be like a registration kind of thing, where people can register their artifacts. Companies can register their artifacts with a central database, and that's where all of the science, results go and things like that, the testing results, and that's transparent and it could be public facing. Then that would be a bit better, I think. The main bit of the UAPDA I wanted was the disclosure group, the historian, the economist, the big group that would review records and release it bit by bit. Yeah, that's what we want, right? An objective group of people. And I put my hand on my heart and say, I do not want anyone in there that is into the UFO subject. They should all be completely impartial and have nothing to do with it and look at the evidence from, not a biased point of view. Because as much as we all, the word bias is like a negative thing, it's seen as an insult. But everyone here, everyone watching this, you and I, we're biased towards seeing UFOs and things. As hard as we try not to, we are biased to see it in the data. So hopefully that can maybe be passed as its own legislation. The AARO gets like a kind of control group that is public and is built up of these different people from different backgrounds that can really give some insight instead of being AARO's like mysterious group that gets to review cases and we don't know who they are, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We still don't even know how much money AARO gets, which is insane. Oh,
Yeah,
God.
absolutely.
Anyways. All right, buddy. Let's move on to the last thing I have for us tonight to talk about.
It's a
and
light
it's
one,
a
right?
oh yeah, this is I'm throwing you a softball here. This definitely isn't like, been talked about for the past couple weeks ad nauseum, but I do want your thoughts on it. Ross Coulthart, the Tic Tac UFO event. You had mentioned Kevin Day, someone who was dramatically affected by the Tic Tac UFO event. Other people on the ships were. The pilots clearly were to some extent. They chased the freaking thing. They still believe, to an extent, I don't want to put words in their mouths, that what they saw was not man-made technology, unless that has changed. However, recent remarks by Ross Coulthart on his own podcast is that he categorically being the key word, knows that the Tic Tac was technology controlled by Lockheed Martin, which, for those of you who may not be familiar, is an aerospace company. Create a lot of things for the U.S. military. Most of the spy planes out of Area 51 came from Skunk Works, a la Lockheed as well. And Ross made the definitive statement on his podcast that he knows that Lockheed Martin was in control of that. Days later, we talked about this on the live stream. He went on News Nation and immediately walked that back and said, I think maybe there's a possibility or something like that it was Lockheed Martin. So that is as you had mentioned on that UFO podcast, a big difference.
Yeah.
And again, like the conversation has just continued on this. So where do you stand today, July 20th, 10:29 p.m. UK time, as it were, on the whole Ross Coulthart Tic Tac thing, man? I gotta ask it.
I am annoyed, in a word. I think that the bar should be higher. You know, when you introduced that story, then you said categorically twice, and I was going to give you props for that because Ross said it twice. He said he categorically knows, categorically, and then he continued for the last 10 minutes of that episode to just double down and triple down and quadruple down, and then he rocks up with a reasonably sure. Now, I try and assume good intent in people. If someone cuts me off on the road, I'll be like, is their wife having a baby in the car or something like that? And I just don't know. Fine, whatever. They're out of my life now. I hope they're okay. But Ross, it's being very generous to say he misspoke. He said it several times during the last 10 minutes of the show. And then the next time we see him a week later, he's saying he's reasonably sure, which is not what categorically means whatsoever. And no one who's ever learned the English language would mix those two terms up. You know, it's not like the kids saying literally when they mean figuratively. He has literally and figuratively used the wrong word there. It frustratingly wouldn't have been a talking point at all if Ross had said he was reasonably sure. No one would have cared. So naturally, people are looking at this and going, does he just want clicks? Is this who Ross is now? And it's a shame because it is damaging his reputation. And it's not the first thing this year that has done that. You know, earlier this year, he said that the doors were going to get blown off and all hell would break loose was his phrase, right? And then Skywatcher came out with like a really tame, fuzzy video that didn't show much of anything that they said they were going to show. So Skywatcher walked their thing back, Ross walked the Skywatcher thing back, and now we're here 6 months later with Ross walking things back again. Is this his brand now? Does he just say things to get a rise out of people and to get talked about in the community and then walk it back as if we're the assholes, quite frankly? It's really frustrating because people always ask Ross, you know, what's the evidence? And Ross will always say, I can't share my sources. I just can't do that. You know, and that's fine. I understand. But he could enlighten people as to his thought process a little bit and keep people anonymous, you know. There might be every chance that in the week between saying those two things, that his source came to him and said, you got that wrong, actually, Ross. We're reasonably sure. And kind of explained a bit, and that's why he's changed his mind. However, Ross has not told us that. So I've got to assume, if I want to be forgiven of his language use and his claim, that, I mean, may or may not be true, right? Reasonably sure is like a 50-50. It's not a categorically. I would, my life would be the same today had I not heard Ross say that at all. And that's kind of harsh to say when someone's like on the news and that's their career and stuff. But it turned out to literally just be hot air, right? Like I said, the bar should be raised. We shouldn't be accepting this. People went crazy when Lou Elizondo put up that photo that turned out to be an irrigation field. Lou fell on his sword and apologized and left the UAP disclosure fund after that, posted a public statement and stuff like that. I think that set the bar. Whether you believe Lou or not, everyone's going to have their own opinions on that. But I think the least Ross could do here is do the same thing. Tell us why you've changed your mind. Tell us why it was categorically and now it's reasonably sure. Because right now, I feel like Ross is just going to tell people to go suck eggs and watch the Kardashians, as he likes to do. And quite frankly, it's not bloody good enough. Like, he's the premier reporter in this space. As well as, Asker Paul is right up there, Matt Laszlo, Chris Witkowski, Daniel Otis and that. But Ross is one of those. And he's, between the egg thing and between this, I think a lot of people are looking at him in a way where they no longer want to watch his stuff because they don't trust what he says, because it doesn't come with any substance. He could say what he can make things up and it would have the same weight as what he's been giving us, quite frankly. If all these sources are out there giving us this information, then he should figure out a way to compile it and give it to us in a reputable way. Because quite frankly, all these people giving him this information are being underserved right now because he's doing things like this. And it's really disappointing and frustrating because we're trying to get this taken seriously.
Oh, man. I could not have said it better myself. And, as you were saying that, I completely forgot about the Jake Barber egg thing. I was thinking about the UFO underground with a building built around.
Third one, right? How many red flags do we need, right?
I'm sorry. It's like, I grew up playing baseball. 3 strikes and you're out. Like, I will give the egg Jake Barber thing. I'll give it a foul ball. So you still got 1 strike left if we're going by baseball, Ross. I'm over it, man. Like, personally, like, Ross is a nice person. I've had him on the show. I've spoken to him. I do like the podcast Need to Know that he does with Bryce Sable. However, I will say this: if there is not a follow-up on this Tic Tac thing from Ross, in terms of like some sort of documentation, or again, as you mentioned, I'm not expecting him to name his sources, but like, you have to give us something. You are a journalist. You're getting paid by News Nation to report on the news. Therefore, there needs to be a journalistic standard that you abide by. And going on News Nation and saying, yeah, the Tic Tac, I didn't mean it was built by them. I meant it's being controlled by them and it's being done psionically. I'm just like, wait, what? Like, now psionics are being brought in? Like, where is this coming from? I don't know, man. Like, I got upset last week. Like, I don't want to do it again. Everything you said is much more eloquent than I would have put it. This is it. Like, I feel like, at least for you, for me, maybe others out there who have been in this UFO thing for a while, this is your last chance, man. Like, we'll hear you out, but like, give us something. And you know what, Dan? Maybe he's 100% right. Maybe his source is 100% right. We do have to keep that open, that there's a possibility that the Tic Tac not easily, but could have been Lockheed Martin in some way, shape, or form. But it's just, the man has dropped so many balls that at this point, I don't know what to make of it. And I say that with love.
Javins, right?
Yeah.
From the actual ball that he dropped, wait, a year or 2 ago. Like, nothing's come of it. It's like, we need follow-up. We need more. Like, this is what we thought we were getting when Ross came into this. Like, a journalist that would chase those leads and give us the results of these investigations. And so far, it's all bluster and no producing actual results.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, you and I are the nice ones out there being critical. There are much rougher people out there talking about this story. So I will say this. if Ross, I doubt he would ever watch this, but if he is, or if Bryce Zabel catches this, like, Bryce, you're great, man. Challenge your co-host. Get us the information that we seek in order to continue following this story. Because right now, to me, it's a dead story. And I don't want to cover it at all until there's some sort of verifiable evidence to prove such. So, and to think that something Stephen Greer said could actually coincide with something that Ross Coulthart said. I never thought I'd see the day, man. I never thought
I know, right? But it's weird as well. Like, this coincides with what Greer said, but also Ross was talking about CE5 when he was talking about psionics and stuff like that. So it's almost like they're trying to reignite Greer's career after Greer was caught by the Washington Reporter investigation, where they thought that they'd, tracked payments to a airfield where someone was paid to drop flares and things like that. And it was a fairly robust investigation that, put a 99% sure on it kind of thing. It might have been wrong, but it's really weird that Greer's kind of getting this redux moment as well. And he's also coming back through that, like, Mike Herrera stuff and some of his whistleblowers. Supposedly he was talking to Barber at one point, Jake Barber of Skywatcher. So yeah, they're really weird seeing Stephen Greer starting to come back into the conversation and being taken seriously by people who should, quite frankly, know better.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen Greer redux. Wow, that's crazy, man. Well, you mentioned Herrera. I got to ask you, going back to our whistleblower story, Suzanne reminded me that I did put a poll up on YouTube. I always forget the poll. This is what I'm known for. I want to get your thoughts after I go to our public here over on YouTube. Let me refresh the YouTube poll. I asked over here, Dan, who do you want to testify at the next Congressional UFO hearing? I know this is something that you and Andy discussed as well. And out of, we've got 59 votes right now. My choices were Jake Barber, Matthew Brown, Mike Herrera, or Tim Phillips. I threw Tim in there. And Jake Barber, 34%, Matthew Brown, 32%, Mike Herrera, 17%, Tim Phillips, 17%. So pretty even between Jake Barber and Matthew Brown, and pretty even between Mike Herrera and Tim Phillips as well. So that's the public, Dan. But who would you personally like to see testify at the next UFO hearing?
That's a really good question. And I changed, like, my answers here are going to be a little different from what I said on that UFO podcast, because I've had a little more time to think about it now. So my dream team, if I had to pick 4 people that were going to testify at a hearing, I would take Jay Stratton. He set up the UAPTF. He has been working in government, trying to get classifications and so on and so forth for UAP. He also was working with Bigelow on some things there. So I think he would be a really interesting guy to get in to testify and could give some hard facts. Matthew Brown, hell yeah. Like, Matthew Brown, I'm seeing him as kind of, I know he hasn't run away to Russia, but he's kind of the Edward Snowden of the this UFO moment. He saw something he shouldn't have as an employee, and he came forward to tell us about it. He has since kind of espoused some more esoteric beliefs about Crowley and, some other things that people are rightfully raising an eyebrow at, but that's clearly just something he's interested in. On the actual interview with Jeremy and George, he was great. I thought, real straight shooter. I'd love to see him show up with the actual documents that he saw and present them and say, if everything you're telling us is true, that you're not doing this, then what are these? I think that would be a wonderful way to go. Finally, something tangible, right? Hal Puthoff, I would put him on the stand. He's getting on a bit now, and I want to get his testimony before the worst happens. God bless him. I hope he has 100 years left in him. But he has been intricately involved in this whole thing, going from Bigelow, even beyond, NIDS, and some other areas, going back to Stargate as well, and the remote viewing stuff. Hal Puthoff has been there the whole way, and he always hints that he's been a part of some program, but he won't say what. Let's get him on the stand. Let's give him the chance to open up about those things. I think that would be great. The last person I would put there would be Jim Lukatsky. He was responsible for ORSAP in the Bigelow days. Also, I've just got to say, if you can hear a dog crying in the background, it's this really sweet little sausage dog upstairs that gets very lonely. And she just, as soon as you give her a big cuddle, she'll be fine. She's not in distress. She just is like, I'm lonely to anyone that will listen. But I promise I'll give her a big hug right after I'm off this.
Please do. Yeah, we'll let you go shortly. I promise. I hate hearing dogs cry. I hate it. It's the worst.
But yeah, Jim Lukatsky, they're in the OSAP days. That investigation happened because of something he saw in the kitchen, an object that appeared in front of him that no one else saw that kind of resembled the Tubular Bells cover. Supposedly had a bit of hitchhiker stuff that happened to him at home. You know, I'm not sure if he was his kids that saw the wolf in the garden or if it was Jay Stratton's kids. I always mix those two up, but they've both had experiences like that with orbs, with creatures or cryptids, we would say, after the whole Skinwalker Ranch thing. So let's get him there too. And then since we're at Skinwalker Ranch as well, just as a bit of funsies, because I know he'll be able to go, look, Sean Kirkpatrick was lying and I can prove it. Let's get Brandon Fugel there as well with the actual data from his science team.
I love that. Wow. Such good choices. I have no one to really add to that. One, you mentioned Bigelow, and Lukatsky and whatnot. I want to see Chris Bartell testify.
Oh,
Do you know who
yes.
Chris is? Okay. Yeah.
One of the security guards, right?
Yeah. So I know he didn't have a lot of experience with like UFOs when he worked at Skinwalker Ranch, but this is a guy who worked at I believe it was the Nevada testing site, aka like Area 51. He was security there. And then what did he do after he worked security at Area 51? He went on to do security at Skinwalker Ranch. Like, talk about a resume, dude. It's insane.
Right.
So like,
And
I
he's
think I would,
he's open as well, right? Like I love the photos he
Yeah.
posts, the reports he posts, like he posts pictures of footprints to social media. He is ready and willing. I think he has a lot to say too.
Yep. And I know he watches us. I've had him on the show. He will be featured in my upcoming book as well. The
Cool.
reason I want to see him testify, Dan, is because of the possible I don't know if it would be considered criminal activity, but he is the one who said we were guinea pigs. Like, it wasn't about me just working security at this place. They wanted to see what physiological effects the ranch would have on us. And that's a problem. I'm not saying like Bigelow is solely responsible for that, but he was a big damn part of it. And the fact that like they never told these guys that they were like out there in possibly dangerous places where they're, I mean, look at what has happened to some of the people on Skinwalker Ranch now in like 2024, 2025. Imagine what was going on back when Bartell was working there. So like,
100%.
I don't know, man. I think there was some shady stuff going on for sure, and Chris might have been affected by that physically. And even if he wasn't, some might have been. So I think I'd like to see someone like him there too. So yeah.
No, I totally agree. Like that should be because so a few weeks back, there's a company called Phenomenon, but it's spelled with an AI for the A in and the guy that runs it, Chris, I was going to say Shermer then. It's not Shermer. The name escapes me. But you can just search it, phenomenainon.com, and you'll see the website. And the guy used to be involved with To the Stars. He was going to be making their app for UFO sightings, basically Enigma's app, but for To the Stars, right? And he has been rolling out some like embracing AI. He's rolled out his website and he's like, look, you can use AI to ask it questions about all this UFO data. So a few weeks back, he puts up these chat GPTs that are just for UFO stuff. And a number of us kind of went on it and realized, hey, you can actually pull all the files out here. And it resulted in a bunch of us like getting all of the Bigelow reports from back in the day. Like there's a yearly report there. Excellent. There is a yearly report there. There's a report on Skinwalker Ranch. The Tic Tac full report is there where they're doing like wind tunnel testing and stress testing on the potential shape of it and stuff like that to see what it's like. In that paperwork, it says that the security guards were employed as a, and I quote, human readout system. So they were bait for sensors, basically, in the actual report. And that is written down, as is the whole, Bigelow buying the data off MUFON when you're not meant to have public data as a government kind of organization. And that's a big no-no. So there's two crimes right there that could be brought up by Chris at a hearing to show, look, the government has been fine with people getting hurt to study this thing. Let's talk about it.
Damn. Big Bobby Biggles is like a freaking mafia boss, dude.
I
Like
love that
crimes.
name.
Yeah, hey. the only way he's gonna testify is if he can get immunity for all the crimes he committed at that
Oh gosh,
place,
yeah.
man. I don't know.
Is
I
it?
don't know.
Can we make it a crime that he gave Trump $1 million? Can we do that?
Yeah, that should be a crime as well. Strike 3, you're out. Get in the get in the dugout with Ross Coulthart, Bagels. Yeah, you guys are done. You're done. Dan, dude, we ran through so much. I kept you longer than I told you, so I'm gonna let you go, my man. But I did want to say a huge thank you to you guys. I saw James Craig here. Love the episode. Really
awesome.
enjoying this episode. Thank you so much, James. I truly appreciate that, buddy.
Yeah.
And Lucy as well. Always love Skinwalker Ranch talk. So yeah, something I wasn't
maybe I'll
expecting.
come back and tell you guys about when Elena and I got to visit Skinwalker Ranch and tell you what happened and show you the weird photos I took. That'd be fun.
What? I didn't know you what to yes, that will be happening.
Sure.
Very soon.
We'll do that in the
please.
future. Let's do it.
Awesome, my man. Well, of course, before I let you go, please let us know what you're up to, where we can find everything that you're doing. And yeah, if there's anything else you want to share with us before we let you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me as always over at the That UFO podcast when we do like news shows. All my social media is at the Signal, like the signal, but with a Z instead of a S, because someone else had it and my surname begins with a Z. So fun. But also, I've got a show coming soon. And I haven't really spoken about it anywhere, but I am like 4 episodes into recording. The social media is out there if you want to be sleuths and try and find it. But the show will be coming out September, I think we're aiming for. And I'm really excited for everyone to hear it.
Awesome. I got a little sneak peek at the website. Again, if you guys are sleuths, I'll sprinkle some breadcrumbs out there.
Sure.
Maybe
that
we'll
works.
see. But I'm really excited with this new show that you're going to be doing. I can't wait to see. It sounds like it's right up my alley, guys. Hint, hint, when it comes to UFOs and whatnot, the human side of a lot of this stuff. So I can't wait to see what you got going on there, what you guys are doing over at That UFO podcast. You guys are cranking it out. It's so good to hear you two back together again talking. It was well needed. We missed you over there at That UFO podcast. That's for sure, Dan.
It's very much like just having banter with a brother. I'm sure Andy would punch me in the arm several times if we were in the same room or something,
Exactly. Yeah, we got to get the band back together, all of us at some point.
We should do an American tour. Let's do a live podcast tour in America. And to Juan Manuel that just asked, I'm a little bit of a Coldplay fan. I really like their last album. I don't think they've done. I like to, with any piece of art, I think of them like Horcrux, right? Voldemort puts his soul into things.
Yeah.
I think you can tell when an artist has done that, and you can tell when they haven't. There's something indescribable about it. And Coldplay have not produced their Horcrux yet, but they got real close on their last album. There was a track called Alien Radio, which I highly recommend. Everyone go listen to. It's just a rainbow on their track list. But just put it on, chuck some headphones in, and listen to it for like 7 minutes. And you'll be like, oh, wouldn't have expected that from Coldplay. Cool. But yeah, so I'm a Coldplay fan, but I would never cheat on my wife.
There we go. Not how I expected this episode to end, but I love it. Hey, are you going to be going to see Oasis, by the way?
I'm not. Yeah. I'm not actually a big Oasis fan, but I saw them way back in the day. A friend of mine went to, he loved them. He went to see them in Cardiff. And he had an extra ticket. No one wanted to go with him. So I paid 20 quid and I saw Oasis like in their prime. Whereas now you can't get tickets for less than 200. So I'm like, been there, done that, whatever.
20 quid? Are you kidding me?
I know.
Dude, people are selling their soul here in Edinburgh. They're going to be here somewhat soon. I think I'll be leaving the city when that happens. Andy's going to hate us, but I also am not an Oasis fan. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But hey, I have bands that people would probably never listen to that have changed my life personally. Sure. And that's the beauty of music. It resonates with you in some way.
100%.
That's what it is, man. But yeah. Awesome, my man. All right, I will let you go. I know you got to get going. Go get that dog.
Thank you for having me.
Crying. My pleasure, buddy.
Thanks to your audience. If anyone has any questions, just hit me up on social media. I do have an email that I can give you guys as well. thesignal@protonmail.com. If you want to get in touch, that's the way you do it.
the Signal at Proton Mail. Got it. Awesome. We'll put a link in the show notes in retrospect as well.
Nice.
And yeah, have a great night, my friend. I really
Perfect.
appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go and cuddle the hell out of this dog now.
Do it. Do it. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone else. Thanks, Dan.
All right, good night.
Good night. Wow. Killed it. Killed it, guys. Again, it's amazing what can happen in the span of an hour. Dan and I were just texting back and forth about unrelated things, and then I just asked him, hey, what are you doing tonight? And boom, 2 hours later, he comes on the show and just kills it. So thank you. My special thanks to Dan for taking the time tonight to do that. And thank you, guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a very fun conversation for the most part. Look, I know we got critical tonight, but that's what we're here for. You know, often people like me, like Dan, Andy, even I'm sure would say, we can often be considered fence sitters in the UFO space, and that's because we're not too quick to make up our minds about things before we hear everything out. However, there are things going on in the UFO world right now that us, the quote unquote nice guys, are not too happy with. And we thought it was worth voicing our opinions on that. So I hope those who we might be critical of take that to heart. We don't mean it vindictively, but you know, show us the receipts. Show us the receipts. That's all I will say on that. But yeah, is there anything else I have here for you guys? Anomicon is coming September 20th and September 21st. Yes, I have decided to do 2 days. Suzanne, I'm so sorry. The speakers just keep coming in, and they are amazing. I have maybe 1 or 2 more to announce very soon. It's just the joke continues to write itself. Anomicon, September 20th and 21st. Free virtual conference on everything anomalous that will be coming to you guys right here on YouTube, on Twitch as well. And I can't wait. I can't wait. You can learn more at anomicon.com. Some of our speakers are already up there, and even their topics they'll be talking about. So yeah, check that out if you get a chance. And check out our episode premiering tonight of the Somewhere in the Skies podcast, where we have return guest Dean Alioto, the filmmaker. He's going to be talking all about part 2 of his documentary series, The Alien Perspective. I may have a special place in my heart for part 2, as I am featured in part 2 of this. The Alien Perspective is an incredible series that Dean has been working on for 7 years of his life. It's just awesome. It's told through the perspective of what aliens might think of us, humans, not what we think of them, which is just so cool. It's a really cool way to kind of shake things up in the space of UFO documentaries. And I think he's done an incredible job. Part 2 really looks at the human side of it and asks the question, why? Why would aliens visit our planet? Not who are they, or where do they come from, but the why. And yeah, you'll see me, you'll see some other familiar faces in part 2, and you'll see some new faces, which is really exciting. So yeah, we talk all about this and so much more on this episode coming to you in just a couple hours. Be sure you're subscribed to the Somewhere in the Skies podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to rate and review the podcast as well. If everyone went over right now after this live stream and rated and reviewed the podcast on Apple, we would shoot up into the featured podcasts over there, the largest platform in the world. So please, if you can, take just a couple moments to rate and review Somewhere in the Skies on Apple. You could also rate us on Spotify as well. We would truly appreciate that. If you're watching us on YouTube right now or in the future, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all that YouTube-y stuff. We would certainly appreciate that too. I think that is it. That's it, guys. Again, my special thanks go out to Amanda and to James for the super chats. Truly do appreciate that. You can leave super chats on the way out as well if you feel so inclined. But if you can't help us monetarily, like I said, just simply like, subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff. Special thanks, as always, to Suzanne for compiling a lot of the stories you guys heard tonight. She is a godsend because I God, I was too busy laughing my ass off in London at one of my favorite podcasts and eating some good food and checking out all the touristy stuff in London, as you do. But that being said, I have some unfortunate news. I will not be doing the live stream next week, guys. Unfortunately, I will be traveling to the US due to unforeseen circumstances. I will not be able to do the live stream next week. I will be in the States. I will be on social media. I'll be, doing everything. The podcast will continue as always. But yeah, no live stream next week. I'll keep you posted if we'll be doing a live stream the following week. But yeah, what I'll do is I'll put up a special interview or something for you guys next Sunday at this normal time that we do the live stream, 4 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, it'll be something fun for you guys. I promise you that. You can go off in the chat. The chat will continue. Whatever I decide to put up for you guys can hang out with each other and have discussions there. But that's going to do it for tonight. Again, special thanks to Dan Zetterstrom and all of you for joining us. And I will leave you, as always, with our mantra here, and that is keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies. Take care, guys. Have a good night.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.